I'm Jessica from Brown Paper Bunny, and today we're going to make these cute little popsicle greeting cards. And so to follow along, you're going to need a blending palette, some watercolor paper, and I like Strathmore 300 series because it blends really nicely with the ink. You'll need some Tombow Dual Brush Pens, and the colors I'm using today are 977, 985, 723, 755 and 837. You might want a ruler. You'll need a Tombow water brush and a Tombow mono drawing pencil, and I'm using an H. You'll need a pair of scissors and a piece of paper towel for cleaning your water brush and cleaning off your blending palette. Okay, let's go. The first step is to sketch a popsicle shape onto your watercolor paper, and you're going to want to do it on the right side of the paper so you have enough room to fold it in half to make the card at the end. So I've put a light guide for myself already, but I'll draw over the top so you can see it a little more clearly. Doesn't matter if they're not terribly straight. My lines are a little bit wobbly, but I think that'll add to the charm overall. And then you'll need a popsicle stick at the bottom. Okay, and now we're ready to paint. We're going to start with our lightest colors first. So grab 723, your light pink, and scribble a generous amount of ink onto your blending palette. And then a little bit of your 755. And a little bit of your 985. By including multiple colors, we'll get a little bit more variation in our painting, and it'll just look a little bit more interesting and more like traditional watercolor. So then grab your water brush and just drop a few drips of water onto the ink and blend the ink with the water. Maybe a few more drops. Okay, this color up the top, which I've mixed a tiny bit of yellow and a tiny bit of the darker pink into, is going to be the base color for the popsicle. So make sure you've got plenty of ink there, and it can be fairly light because you're going to add to it once this first layer is done. So just pick up the ink with your brush and start painting it onto your popsicle. You need to move fairly quickly so that it stays wet, and we'll be able to drop some other colors into this ink. So just pick up more ink anytime you need it. Keep painting. If you need to, you can go back over this ink, make sure it just stays wet. And depending where you live, the ink will dry faster or slower, depending on whether it's humid or very dry. Okay, almost done. get a little bit of that yellow, mix it in with any leftover pink you've got at the top. Just pick up that ink and drop some of it in to the wet ink on your paper. So just give it a little bit of color variety and variation, and it'll look like there's a little bit of texture. It just makes it a little bit more fun. Now I'm just dropping this yellowy orange into the top half, and then I'm going to mix up a little bit of this darker pink, a little bit more water, and I'm going to drop some of this in around the bottom. Just let it blend however it wants to. And so over here, this has already started to dry a little bit, so you can see it's not blending. But what we can do is just ever so slightly squeeze your brush, kind of blend some of that in. The fun of using any kind of wet medium like this is that, you know, it just kind of has a mind of its own, and it's okay to just let it do what it wants to do. And the beauty of using Tombow Dual Brush Pen ink too is that you can kind of re-wet it and re-blend it if you don't like how it blended the first time. Add a little bit more color up the top here. Okay, so while this first layer is drying, you might want to clean up your brush just by giving it a gentle squeeze and wiping it on the paper towel until all the color runs clear. Okay. And then you can use your paper towel to clean off some room on your blending palette. So now use your 977, your light brown, scribble a little bit of ink. So you're going to add a little bit of extra ink up the top here. And then grab your yellow 985, a little bit there. Just drop couple of drops of water like you did before and blend the ink with the water. So leave this top area unblended for now, and we're going to warm up this brown a little bit by adding some yellow into it. And then like you did before, just pick up the ink with your brush and paint it onto your watercolor paper. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of this unblended brown and just start to drop it in where the stick meets the popsicle, just to give it a little bit of a shadow there. Okay, you can clean off your brush. Now, I actually want to give the popsicle a little bit of a shadow, as if it's laying down on the table. So I'm going to mix up just a little bit of this kind of maroon color 837 with some of the brown that's on the blending palette here. And I'm going to add quite a bit of water, quite a few drops there, because I want it to be really pale, very subtle. Keep painting around the side here. I'm imagining that the light source is coming from this direction, so it's casting a shadow on the opposite side. Maybe just a tiny bit of shadow in here as well. Okay, we're going to wait for that to dry before we move on to the next step. Okay, once this first layer is totally dry, it's time to add a little bit of shadow. So mix up some 837 with a little bit of 755. Add some water, blend them together. Okay, pick up that ink, and we're going to, again, we're imagining that the light is coming from this direction. So because these are indents, you'll get some shadow along this edge here. So just paint in a little bit of shadow. And do the same on this other side over here. These are just the first layers. We're going to add some additional shading after this layer dries. Clean off your brush. And we're going to add a little bit of shadow on the popsicle stick down here. So you can just grab a little bit of yellow, but mostly the brown. And just paint in a little bit of extra shadow here as well. of your brush. And then we're just going to wait for all of this to dry, and then we'll add the next layer. Next, we're going to add a little bit more shading to the entire area of these indents here. So drop a little bit more water onto the color that you last mixed up. Pick up that ink, and then just start covering this whole section here. This will just help to give the appearance that these sections here are a little bit in shade and they go into the popsicle. Okay, do the same on the other side. And might add another little bit of shadow to the popsicle stick as well. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more brown. Actually, you know what? I want this to be really dark, right where it meets the popsicle. So I'm actually going to put the ink directly onto the paper. Just a thin little line. And then I'm going to use my water brush just to blend it slightly. Okay, for our last layer, we're just going to increase this shadow a little bit more along this edge here. So I'm going to just mix up a little bit more of this darker kind of maroon, the 837. And I've already got some of the pink on my blending palette. So just mix those two together. Paint on a little bit of a darker shadow over the top of the layers we've just added in. Okay, do the same on the other side. Okay, clean off your brush. And then let that last little bit of shadow dry for a few minutes. To add a little bit more fun to this popsicle, we're going to add some ink splatters. But before you do that, you're going to want to cover your surface with just some scrap paper or an old box or something like that to protect it from any splatters that go sort of further than we'd like them to go. This way. Okay, grab your blending palette and mix up whichever color you'd like to add splatters for. I'm going to go with this darker pink. And you, oh, don't drop your brush. And you're going to want to add quite a lot of water. Mix up the ink and pick up lots of it on your brush. And then you just want to tap it towards your paper until you get these little splatters. And if you don't want any on your popsicle itself, you could cut out a piece of scrap paper to lay over the top to protect it, but I'm okay with getting some kind of all over. Okay, now we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to actually cut out and fold our card to finish it off. Okay, now that everything's dry, we're going to fold and then cut out our card. So first I'm going to score the paper where I want it to fold. So let's just line this up. And you don't have to do this, you could just fold it if you'd like. Just depending on how thick your watercolor paper is, it might be easier to score it first. So I think, yeah, about there. And I don't have a scoring tool handy, so I'm actually just going to use the non-brush end of a small paintbrush. And I'm just going to run it along, whoops, it's leaving a mark. It's all right, we're gonna fold it. Run it along the edge of the paper. Kind of crease it. This just makes it a little bit easier to fold. So once it's folded, now you can cut around it to give it sort of a fun cutout look. Okay, there you have your cute little popsicle card, and you're ready to write in it and send it off. Thanks for watching, and if you share your own project to social media, I hope you'll tag Tombow USA and Brown Paper Bunny so we can take a look.